Welcome to your Essential Business Briefing. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, can the car industry recover from the COVID-19 crisis? Sales have plunged and tens of thousands of jobs have been lost. We'll speak to the boss of French carmaker Citroën about whether the pandemic could speed up a shift to electric vehicles. And we'll find out how manufacturers are targeting younger customers by branching out from their traditional dealerships. The coronavirus pandemic has been a double whammy for the motor industry, disrupting supplies, but also hitting demand as countries went into lockdown. Carmakers have made massive job cuts in response to the crisis, and the industry's flagship events in Europe, the Paris and Geneva car shows, have been cancelled for this year and next. Let's start with a briefing on what's been happening in the sector. Kate Moody's back with us in studio. Kate, great to see you. What's been going on with car sales in the past few months?
Well, sales screeched to a halt in March as lockdown measures were imposed. European car sales fell by 78% in April. In France, sales dropped by a record-breaking 89% compared to the same month a year earlier. In May, sales slowly began picking up, still down around 57% year on year, and the trend continued in June. European industry groups expect overall sales for the year to drop around 25%. Now, the broad picture was similar around the world, less drastic in the US, where consultants say sales dropped by over half and about a third in April and May, respectively. It's likely to take years for sales to recover to their pre-pandemic levels, though. In China, the recovery started earlier. Sales for the first quarter were down 42%, but activity picked up in April and May, ending 21 months of sales declines.
So what's been the impact on jobs then?
Well, nearly 14 million people in Europe work for the auto industry, both directly and indirectly. Thousands of jobs are at risk, and some, but not all of those job cuts are linked to the pandemic downturn. Among the biggest confirmed during the pandemic, Renault with 15,000 layoffs worldwide, about a third of them here in France. Germany's BMW with 6,000, Nissan nearly 3,000 in Spain, and in the UK, Jaguar, Land Rover and Bentley each around 1,000. Suppliers are also cutting back. In Germany, ZF, which makes brakes and other parts, plans to eliminate up to 15,000 positions, and this may be only the beginning of the road. Now,
governments have been stepping in with rescue plans for the sector. Where has that money come from and where is it going?
Well, the most significant aid has come here in France, where the government announced an €8 billion rescue package for the sector in May. Companies that hope to benefit had to agree to bring more research, development and manufacturing activity back to French soil and agree to focus on green technology, producing more electric and hybrid vehicles. Spain and Germany have also announced financial incentives for less polluting cars in an effort to stimulate their auto industries. And some analysts see this crisis as a real opportunity to speed up the transition to lower emissions.
Kate Moody, thank you very much for that. Now, I've been speaking to Vincent Cobée, who's the chief executive of the French carmaker Citroën, which is part of the PSA group. I started by asking him what his view was of the car market now.
I think it's fair to say that the car market has been in turbulence for the last 3-4 months. I mean, we all know we're just coming out of a very tough period for all of us. And for all intents and purposes, the shops, the plants were closed from mid-March to probably the second half of May. So this has quite a substantial impact in terms of production, in terms of sales. And for the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've seen very high interest in purchasing cars, a lot of traffic, both physical and digital, a lot of orders. So we're coming out of a crisis in a fairly dynamic way, I would say.
Does that make you optimistic for a recovery from this crisis? And what sort of timeline would you see for the car market returning to where it was before?
Let's be honest, qualitatively, the market will not be what it was before. There's a lot of impact, short and long term, of what customers will be looking for. On one side, for sure, individual mobility will have an increased value for a lot of people around the world after this 2 or 3 months of lockdown because of the pandemic. On the other side, there's a strong, I would say, political and administrative push for cleaner mobility. And you can see this in most countries in the last weeks. There will also be an economic impact. So we see a lot of demand today. That demand is a bit of a rebound to the lockdown. We can easily assume that there will be maybe months, if not nearly a year, before some stability comes and the recovery comes. What will come after that, for sure, is interest in individual mobility, some economic pressure, and also an increased interest in low-emission vehicles. So those three things are a new norm, assuming there will be any form of norm.
So as a car maker, how is Citroën preparing for that new future?
So the good news for us, if I could say, is we have a pleasure in Citroën. We love innovation, and we love the idea of being extremely close to our consumer demand as a family, I would say. So that led us to introduce a mobility solution at the end of February called whammy, which offers urban, clean mobility at an extremely affordable cost. And then we're bringing C4 today, which offers you a traditional combustion engine, but also a choice of mobility with a full battery EV. So we have this built-in passion and flexibility to accompany the evolutions of society I was talking about a bit earlier.
Does that mean that there's still space for the company to grow? Will Citroën be as big a company in the future as it is now?
Yeah, we believe that we've been on an extremely positive trend in Europe over the last 6 years. We have built the foundation for continuous growth in terms of market share in the European market in the years to come. So that's one pillar. The second thing is we have built the capability to have international expansion in the next 5 years in many areas around the world. I would name Latin America, Africa, Middle East, and also South Asia with India. So there'll be a two-pronged opportunity for us to grow, the addition of new models, new technology, and higher performance in Europe, and a family of vehicles that will address the core of markets in a number of regions around the world. So yeah, I'm fairly optimistic about the ability of Citroën to grow in the years to come.
You're launching an electric version of the C4, which is sort of a saloon SUV crossover. What proportion of Citroën sales are electric cars now, and what's your target for the coming years in growing that?
So, if you want to keep some simple numbers, as of today, year to date, the PSA group, so all the brands comprising the PSA group, is hovering around 6% of sales being low emission vehicles. So that includes battery EVs and plug-in hybrids. If we project ourselves in the next years, you'll see that percentage mechanically, organically growing to something which you can assume will be maybe 8 to 10% next year and more as we move forward. So Citroën will progressively introduce electrified solutions on all of its lineup and will mimic that growth. So this year, we're talking, when it's available on the vehicles, 5, 6, 7% mix of low emission vehicles. Next year, the rule of the game will probably move closer to 10.
Do you think that this crisis will encourage more people to buy electric cars? Will it instill a push in people to move to an electric vehicle?
There's a lot of things that will support the progressive share of electrified or pure electric vehicles. One is obviously legislation. The second one is infrastructure. How easy is it for you to find a charging solution? And obviously, there is consumer sentiment. If there's one thing we can be sure about is the outcome of the crisis we just lived will enhance the willingness of individual mobility and a sensitivity for sustainability and the environment. So those two things will mechanically increase the interest for electrified vehicles. Now, we need to combine this with a lot of pressure from an economic viewpoint. So price competitive, zero emission, individual mobility is something that has a lot of opportunities moving forward.
What about the question of car sharing? It's something that we're hearing more and more about. From Citroën's point of view, how quickly are people moving to car sharing models, and what would that mean for your company?
As part of PSA, we do have a car sharing offer through our subsidiary Free2Move. And Free2Move is already present in some markets in Europe and beyond. We will be adding Citroën whammy to the portfolio of vehicles put in place by Free2Move in a car sharing mode. And I think, this is an interesting evolution of our market. There's a lot of demand, there's a lot of interest from many types of transportation in a sharing mode. Now we need to make sure that this is meeting a feasible business model, and that's what Free2Move is actually juggling with and having quite good results about.
Okay, Vincent Cobée, CEO of Citroën, thank you very much for speaking to us. Now, you heard Vincent Cobée there refer to Citroen's light electric vehicle, whammy. It's targeted at eco-conscious younger buyers, a market which many car makers are keen to access. That means new sales strategies too, as Yuka Royer now reports.
Parked among books and cameras, this tiny electric vehicle is now being sold at this major multimedia chain store. With a top speed of 45 km per hour and up to 75 km of autonomy, the whammy, meaning friend, is technically not a passenger car. Just like a moped, anyone over 14 can drive it in France without a full license.
C'est des finitions qui sont assez basiques, quoi. C'est pas surchargé, il n'y a pas de commode centrale.
Ça me rappelle un peu un Playmobil, un Lego, un truc comme ça.
Je trouve qu'elle est beaucoup plus spacieuse que la Smart. Moi, j'ai laissé la Smart pour marcher à pied, mais elle est très bien cette voiture. C'est un petit jouet.
Starting at under 7,000 euros, it's half the price of rival models sold at car dealers. It's also a welcome addition for the vendor, looking to expand its product range beyond books, phones and laptop computers.
La mobilité électrique, c'est un nouveau marché important, très dynamique. On l'a vu sur les trottinettes. L'année dernière, c'est plus de 400 000 trottinettes vendues en France. Le groupe en vend 100 000, on est leader. Donc c'est assez naturel pour nous de continuer dans cette voie aujourd'hui en allant plus loin avec ce véhicule.
For the manufacturer Citroen, it's an opportunity to reach out to younger clients, according to one expert.
L'âge moyen de l'acheteur automobile en France, il est assez élevé, il est à 56 ans, donc c'est un bon moyen d'aller capter ses clientèles sur d'autres canaux, d'autres moyens de distribution.
Large supermarket chains have also tried to sell cars online in the past, but the trial didn't work well and the idea was scrapped.
Well, that's it from us for now. But get in touch with your views on the future of the motor industry. You'll find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Fake news. Noun. False stories that appear to be news, spread on the internet or using other media. At France 24, our job is to provide you with information that's been verified. We check sources, we check facts, we sort what is true from what is fake.
At the France 24 Observers, we verify photos and videos circulating online. If they're fake, we let you know and tell you how we spotted them.
In Fact or Fake, we dig into viral stories around Europe to shake out the truth from the trash.
Every day, the Info Migrants team scours social networks to fight fake news about the reality of migration.
France 24, news based on facts.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.